Jason, for anybody who is not familiar, trace, if you will, a little bit of your background, in particular your background as North Carolina representative from Lincoln County.
Sure, and thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to voters. I was appointed in 2011. I was serving as our Republican Party chairman, and Jonathan Ryan, who had been our representative at the time, moved to Gaston County, and so therefore vacated the seat and wasn't eligible to hold the seat. So our local GOP Executive Committee, which I was chairing the party at that time, asked me to serve, and I got the required number of votes and was put in the House that way. And then in 2012 ran for re-election, had a three-way primary, won that with 52% of the vote, and then have been serving ever since. When I run, or when they'd asked me to run, they had asked me if I'd at least commit to running 4 terms. This is going into that 4th term. That's what I'm running for at this point in time. Doesn't require me to not run again after 4 terms, but our local GOP executive board said they wanted consistency and they wanted someone who would serve for a while, and so I had agreed to that, and so that's why I'm running for the 4th term. Part of the reason why I'm running for the 4th term. While in the House, I've served as the IT Appropriations Chairman, which looks over about $1.6 billion in the budget because it spans all agencies and their IT spends and their IT governance. And then I'm also the Finance Chairman. I'm the Senior Finance Chair for the House, which oversees tax policy, which over the last 6 years, we've been working on tax reform, lowering tax rates for individuals, for corporations, and really focused on economic development. So that's what I've done in a nutshell while I've been in the House.
Your opponent, and this time around you do have an opponent in both the primary and the general election, unlike 2 years ago.
Right.
This time you do, and your opponent in the Republican primary, who used to be a Libertarian, has raised some issues, some things that he talks about. One of those, which I think most of our readers will not be familiar with, don't know whether they really care about it or not, but is the ALEC. Tell us a little bit. He sees your association with ALEC as a negative. Tell us a little bit about ALEC and what it does and why you see it as a positive.
Well, he would, because he's still at heart a Libertarian. He's not a Republican. He may be registered Republican, but he has very much identified himself as still a Libertarian. ALEC was formed out of the Reagan administration, folks who had served in the wrong Reagan administration. Most importantly, and one of my favorites, is Reagan's economist, Dr. Art Laffer. He was there initially when they set up and began forming ALEC. And ALEC basically is American Legislative Exchange Council, and that is conservative legislators from across the nation. So we gather, we work on policy, we work together on that. We find what works best, and we also find out what doesn't work in states. And that's where I've been able to really fine-tune and hone some of the tax reform that we put forth in North Carolina. That's what ALEC is really about. His criticism is much what he read off the internet, and I won't address it much more than that, but to say that if you want a conservative Republican that's associated with a conservative Republican group, then I'm your guy.
What do you see as the issues that the General Assembly will face in the next 2 years?
Well, a lot of what we're facing, it's kind of an ongoing story. We've been working on tax reform, but also education spending, getting education spending right. In this current budget, we're going in, you'll see on average, another 6.5% increase in teacher salaries. So it's something that we've said has been important. We went 6 years under the opposition's party rule where they did no pay increases for teachers. That put us behind, so we've been trying to play catch up, and we've been doing a good job at that. And again, we've built into this next budget that we're going into another raise for teachers, but also making sure that we're spending in the correct places for technology and those type of things in the state budget on education. Obviously, we always have healthcare issues, we always have budget issues, business recruitment issues, but we've been doing very well over the last 6 years and making sure that we put our state in a place where we're at least competitive and many times winning when it comes to a global economy. So those are the type of issues that we'll deal with. I think folks need to understand, sometimes they believe that the state representatives serving in Congress in Washington, D.C., that's not the case. We always balance a budget. We always make sure that our obligations are paid. We put money into the rainy day fund, and we've increased that so that when we have a hurricane like we've had and like we will continue to have, or other natural disasters, we're able to pay for that. and not go back to taxpayers with a surprise tax or something like that. So those issues kind of remain the same. Technology is something that I've been really focused on while in the legislature, and from schools to government efficiency. We've worked on our Government Data Analytics Center, which is bringing a lot of the data that we have in state government, protecting it, because I think it's important for the state to protect citizen data, but also making sure that we're using that data in a more efficient manner, just like going to get your driver's license online versus having to sit at the DMV. No one likes to do that. Now, if you have a good driving record because of an initiative that I sponsored, you can actually renew your driver's license online. So those type of efficiencies, I think, are what people expect out of state government, and we intend to deliver more of those.
One thing that may be a bit controversial, in fact, I'm sure it is, it has been in the past, the North Carolina Attorney General, who happens to be a Democrat, dropped the state's suit over the voter ID legislation. It's my understanding that we may see new legislation coming in the General Assembly this year.
You very well may, and what the Attorney General has done, and he didn't vote for it when he was in the state Senate, and the Attorney General is a friend of mine, but we don't see eye to eye on a lot of policy issues. And so, he's using his power in his office to advance that agenda. What you will see from the General Assembly going into this short session is probably another voter ID bill. It's incredibly popular with not just Republicans, but also Democrats and unaffiliated voters. So it's something that they want to know that there's integrity in the elections, that people are who they say they are when they go to vote. And so I think you'll see another attempt at that as we go into the session.
Education, of course, is the biggest thing that money is spent on.
Sure.
Do you see any big changes in, obviously there have been some teacher raises and so forth, but for example, according to what our superintendent of schools in Lincoln County recently told the county commissioners, the money from the state for classroom supplies has actually decreased over the last several years. Do you see any changes coming in there?
I do, and I think that's part of the long-term goal, making sure that we want to make sure that we're spending correctly. And then also, as you see, allowing ballot initiatives like you see in Lincoln County now, taking some of the sales tax money and allowing for investment in technology in the classroom and other things. You'll see more of that. I think folks understand just how important education is, because really everything else that we do, from economic development to economic recruitment, hinges on whether or not we have a qualified workforce. And so we're going to continue to invest in education, find ways to fund the things that we need. Not simply just throw money at the problem. That's not something we want to do. We want to make sure that we spend tax dollars wisely. But it's always at the top of the list of importance. As a father and a husband, but as a father of a 9-year-old in public schools, I want to make sure that he has everything that he needs to, and I want to make sure that teachers have the tools that they need to teach in their classroom.
The North Carolina General Assembly has had a number of disagreements at times with the former board of the UNC governors. Understand there's some new folks involved in that now. Do you expect relations to improve?
I think it's like anything else. It was a change. It was a change in thinking, a change in way of doing business, and mainly because those have been old political holdovers from the old Democrat administrations. So you now see new people on the board, and naturally there would be some conflict there. Folks who have been on the outside looking in, wanting to make changes. I think a lot of the changes that they've recommended have been good changes, particularly when it comes to tuition and trying to keep those costs low as best we can so that more North Carolina students can go to college and get a 4-year degree. But I think you'll see, as they all get kind of used to each other, that you'll see some of that kind of cool off, and there won't be as much conflict. But I'm glad that those who have served before and those who are serving now, they really do have the best intentions for students in North Carolina, and for what our universities really are intended to do, and that is to educate the public. I mean, we are not just in terms of students there, but also they have a greater mission of working in the state of North Carolina as they work on research, as they try to improve our lives, whether it be, say, agriculture at NC State or medical research at Carolina. These things are incredibly important. So I know that the folks serving on those boards know that, and they want to just see the best use of our dollars.
Some years ago, North Carolina approved the education lottery. We've heard criticisms that that money isn't all going where it was intended,
right,
and that we're not getting the money from the lottery fully for education as was the original talk when it was passed.
Yeah, so when that was passed, I worked for a group called Citizens for a Sound Economy that was opposed to the education lottery. And at heart, I believe that we should fund education needs as we see them and as we need them, and appropriate the money appropriately. But once the education lottery was passed, and that some votes were bought with promises that this would go to schools, and it is going to schools, but like anything else, it has operation costs and politics associated with it, so that money's divided in different ways. I would like to see it get back to straight appropriations, but no one's going to get rid of the lottery. It's here. You run the risk of, I always hear people criticize the lottery. I'm not a fan of it. However, it's there. What we really want to see is maximization of the dollars that are there, and make sure that they do go to education. So that's part of our oversight. And that gets into a lot of turf wars and politics, and folks who've always done it one way always hesitant to do it another way. But the lottery is what it is. It's there, and it will fund education. One of the things that I would like to see is that their advertising budget is limited. Again, if you're going to have it, you might as well maximize the usefulness of it, and then make sure that those monies go to local school systems.